Basically, what I'm inquiring about is the spend to date in 2022 under the Rural Regeneration and Development Fund. And you might tell me whether that takes into account money carried over from last year. The total amount of the allocation in the estimates for the fund for 2020, the value of the projects approved for funding in 2022 as well. I think this is important because notoriously most of these schemes are underspending, and what we're finding with the capital budgets, when you look at it at the end of each month, is that there's a crazy underspend in all of this.
Right. Thank you, Deputy Ó Cuív, for raising this. The Rural Regeneration and Development Fund provides funding for the development and construction of capital projects in towns and villages in rural areas across Ireland. The fund has to date allocated funding of €280 million for 191 projects across the country, worth a total of €380 million. The RRDF is central to achieving the objectives and key deliverables of our rural future, the Government's 5-year policy for rural Ireland. The projects supported by the fund assist in the regeneration of rural towns and villages by addressing vacancy and dereliction and positioning them for further growth through regeneration and town centre renewal. The fund also invests in strategic projects that contribute to further economic development in rural areas. The 2022 allocation for the Rural Regeneration and Development Fund is €60 million. There is also a carry forward from 2021 to €9 million, which can be utilised across the wider programme area depending on the level of demand. The total spend to date in 2022 from the fund is €20.3 million, with significant levels of further funding drawdowns expected before the year end. In January 2022, I announced funding of €24.5 million for 27 projects from the third call of Category 2 applications. Category 2 provides the smaller grants to enable the development of project proposals suitable for future calls. The fourth call of Category 1 applications to the Rural Regeneration Development Fund, which are the large-scale capital projects with planning in place, closed earlier this year. I expect to be in a position to make a substantial announcement on the successful projects arising from this call in the coming weeks. This will further strengthen the pipeline of projects to be delivered under the fund for the coming years.
Thank you. Deputy.
Minister, thanks for the information. So basically what you're telling me is that 69 million was available for spending this year, and that 20, with I think 0.3 thrown in on top for luck, has been spent to date, which means that 49 million in the old maths is left to spend in 2 months. Can you explain to me how it is that in 10 months of the year, only 20 million, when you had budgeted that you required, and no doubt you went fighting to the minister saying, we need a lot of money for this scheme. Can you explain to me how it is that it's so slow spending? And are we also getting this infernal habit repeating itself where local authorities send bills in at the end of the year?
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. And, I continue every time I meet local authorities, and I meet them fairly often, to put the pressure on to get the money spent. Because I said to them yesterday, if you don't spend the money, it's very hard for me to make the case for more money. And you'll appreciate that yourself, Deputy, because there's always competing demands at budget time. But as I said, the budget of 69 million is for this year. They've spent over 20 million. I do expect significant levels of drawdown before Christmas. You know yourself, the bills do come in towards the end of the year. And I have taken steps to use savings in other areas this year already. And I transferred over money into the local improvement scheme. So I was able to use funding there. I was able to provide some additional funding into the community centres fund. Again, that's important money that will be some of it will be drawn down very quickly, I expect, because they're not, the grants are in the first tranche are relatively small. So again, can I just say to you that I am continually putting the pressure on and keeping the pressure on the local authorities to spend.
Deputy.
Minister, what you're actually telling me, though, if we look at the figures, is you got 60 million this year. You spent 20, but take 9 out of that. You've actually only spent 11 million of this year's allocation, which is a very, very, very small percentage after 10 months. You say that you're going to spend a significant amount between now and the end of the year, which indicates to me that your department might know. Can you tell me what is the department's estimate of what they will spend between now and the end of the year, which is only, in real terms, 5 or 6 weeks because of the Christmas period? The second thing is, do you foresee a carry forward once again when people are looking, screaming for money under schemes like the LIS? Do you foresee a significant carry forward by your department of capital funding into next year?
Minister, can you close?
Thanks, Deputy. Yeah, well, there has been, I expect there will be significant spend in the next, we still have November and a good bit of December. So I expect there will be significant funding. Look at, some of these projects take longer than anybody would like. They've had problems with supply chains. They can't get, there's one project that they're waiting for a particular piece of equipment to finish it. And shall we see that right across the board? But I am putting the pressure on. But I have to say, when you see the finished projects, and sometimes they take a bit longer than you expect, they're well worth it. I was down in New Ross there only a couple of weeks ago, and they're after spending, it took a lot longer than I thought. But my goodness me, it's some project. They have regenerated the centre of the town. So, and these large-scale projects that we're doing, sometimes there are delays, but they're certainly more impactful in terms of making a real difference in town centres. It's too early to say exactly what the savings will be this year, but I'm trying to keep any carryover to the bare minimum. And I'm like you, Deputy, when you were in this department.
Thank you, Minister.
You try to keep the spend going and keep the pressure on.